climate is in crisis. The signs are all around us. Join us for a journey around the globe as we examine how we all are being affected by the growing climate health crisis and what businesses, leaders, artists, and everyday people are doing to solve it. This is 24 Hours of Reality. Protect our planet, protect ourselves.
Welcome, I'm Yi Shu. Thank you for joining us for 24 Hours of Reality. Protect our planet, protect ourselves. We know the truth. The climate is in crisis. Our health is at stake. We are standing at a crucial moment. Our fossil fuel dependency is creating dire pollution-related health consequences. Extreme weather, infectious disease, water and food scarcity are taking tremendous tolls on the health of individuals, communities, and even economies. The situation is urgent, but there are solutions we can embrace today, from renewable energy to sustainable agriculture and forestry, low carbon transit, and efficient buildings. For the next 17 hours, we will be exploring the powerful ways people are coming together to create real change, from solar-powered hospitals in Nigeria to urban gardens helping to reduce carbon in Mexico City. Travel with us tonight as former Vice President of the United States and the founder and chairman of the Climate Reality Project, Al Gore leads the way around the globe. This year, we come to you live from the Los Angeles State Historic Park, situated in the area considered the birthplace of Los Angeles. In addition to being a beautiful setting along the Los Angeles River Greenway, this site marks a powerful community and environmental triumph, bringing the California State Parks mission to some of the most underserved communities in the nation's second largest city. From this home base, Vice President Gore will join us to speak with world leaders, passionate celebrities, and enjoy incredible musical performances. To see the full rundown of guests, visit 24hoursofreality.org. And now, for the next hour, we will continue our journey in Indonesia. Please join me in welcoming the man whose leadership and dedication to educating others continues to inspire climate action around the globe. The founder and chairman of the Climate Reality Project, former U.S. Vice President Al Gore.
Thank you, Yi. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you. Thank you for your help. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the beginning of hour number 8 of our 24 Hours of Reality program this year, and we're going to focus on Indonesia. And as with the other nations we have examined, we're going to focus on the relationship between the climate crisis and health. The climate crisis is a health crisis, and we see the evidence in Indonesia as well. Indonesia is a very large, highly populated country. We will see that it is beginning to implement some of the solutions, but we will also see that the health problems are quite severe. We're not going to focus on all of the relationships between the climate crisis and health. We're going to focus on these 4, and we're going to begin with heat stress, because temperatures are rising all around the world, and they are certainly rising in Indonesia. With a 2-degree Celsius increase in global temperatures, Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, could exceed the lethal heat threshold for half of each year. So this obviously has extreme health implications, and those who are most vulnerable include children and infants, the elderly, the homeless, the mentally ill, those with pre-existing conditions. The most vulnerable are those most at risk from the health crisis connected to the climate crisis. Extreme weather events are not uncommon in Indonesia, but as in other countries, as the oceans get warmer, the storms get stronger, as the water vapor from the oceans increases, as the oceans warm, the rain bombs, the heavy precipitation events that cause flooding and other consequences also increase. The droughts increase. So the extreme weather events have been getting more severe in Indonesia. This was just 2 weeks ago in North Aceh. This was just the very end of October in West Java. People were killed, more than 1,400 homes flooded there. This was 1 year ago with Tropical Storm Dahlia, and 1 year ago with the very heavy, deadly rains and mudslides in much of East Java. These events have become even more common, and they have become more severe. And the combination of downpours and flooding and sea level rise, along with the subsidence of the land, that is, in Jakarta in particular, the land is sinking, and there are many reasons for this, but the combination of the land getting lower and the sea level getting higher means that the flooding risk in Jakarta and in other places in Indonesia is particularly severe. The number of people that could be displaced if the Trump administration turns out to be correct in predicting a 4-degree increase in this century. 44 million people could be displaced in Indonesia. Even a 2-degree increase could displace 16 million people in Indonesia because of sea level rise. In fact, 1,500 of the islands that make up Indonesia could be completely lost to rising seas by mid-century, which is only a little over 30 years from now. So this is an almost unthinkable catastrophe. It is yet more evidence why the world must take action. And as I mentioned, the same increased heat that is trapped by the man-made global warming pollution that increases the evaporation off the oceans and intensifies the rainfall patterns and more flooding, that same extra heat makes the droughts take hold more quickly, drive deeper into the ground, and last longer. There were record drought years in 2015 and 2014. Here is an example in Rongkap in central Java. Now let's look at the role of infectious disease. You know, the changes in the climate are changing the areas where these infectious diseases can take root and become endemic. Tropical diseases have been gaining a foothold in areas they never were found before, partly because a warming world and a world with new precipitation patterns makes the world friendlier to these infectious diseases and tips the balance against humanity. The tropical diseases have been spreading much more rapidly, partly due to air travel, but again because the climate crisis is making many areas more conducive to these diseases taking root and becoming endemic. Mosquito-borne diseases are a particular threat in Indonesia, and Zika, malaria, dengue, diarrheal diseases, and cholera are predicted to increase significantly as the temperatures go up. The number of people at risk of contracting malaria is expected to nearly double in the next 30 years. These health consequences are quite severe and are properly getting attention from doctors and scientists. Waterborne diseases also increase as waters warm, and particularly the warming of waters that are polluted, then these waterborne diseases become a much more serious problem. The Citarum River is known as the most polluted river in the entire world, and it is the sole source of water for 15 million Indonesians. People should not live in these conditions, and it is an example of how the world has to become much bolder in cleaning up all of this pollution. Typhoid, leptospirosis, and cholera thrive in polluted water, especially as the temperature of the water increases. Air pollution, which as we've seen in the other countries we've visited during this program, is a major source of disease and death. And the air pollution results from the burning of fossil fuels mainly, and the burning of forests. And the latter is a particular problem in Indonesia because the peat forests that are very rich in carbon give off a lot of global warming pollution and particulate pollution. This has caused the death of many thousands of Indonesians. In fact, mortality from air pollution in Indonesia is responsible for a loss of 3% of Indonesia's gross domestic product. And more than 100,000 people are estimated to have died in 2015 from the exposure to the extraordinary amount of air pollution and smoke from the peat fires. Now, the peat fires are caused in significant part by the intentional burning of peat forests in order to clear land for palm oil plantations. Corruption plays a major role because some of the laws and regulations are willfully broken, with payoffs to some of the local and regional officials that approve these illegal plans to burn the peat forests. So this is a major health problem that is connected to the worsening climate that comes from the same pollution. Globally, 9 million emergency visits for asthma worldwide and other lung diseases that are connected to the air pollution that is part of the climate crisis. But as elsewhere, Indonesia is also innovating and implementing solutions, and we have the solutions at hand. For example, Sumba Island has a plan to go 100% renewable by 2025, just 8 years from now. This is an inspiring goal, and we all hope they achieve it. This solar farm provides electricity to 750 homes, and we've seen a big increase in the implementation of solar projects in Indonesia. In fact, Indonesia now plans to get 23%, of its electricity from renewable sources in only 7 years. That's according to their national energy policy, and most observers think they will reach that goal. Other solutions that are not talked about as much as they should: mass transportation. For example, Jakarta was the very first bus rapid transit system in Asia. And the leadership of Indonesia has been inspiring in stating very important goals. President Widodo has really been a leader in articulating the vision for how the world can solve the climate crisis. So Indonesia's health impacts from the climate crisis are very severe, but Indonesia is beginning to implement the solutions. We should take some inspiration from the progress they have made and work harder to solve the climate crisis.
Thank you, Mr. Gore. Well, climate solutions start with you, which is why we want to hear your voice. Every hour, we'll be checking in to see how you're taking action and what your questions are on social media with actor and climate activist Calum Worthy.
Welcome back to the social media corner of 24 hours of reality.
I'm doing the dance move to stay warm right now.
And we are so excited because we've seen so much incredible activity online, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Weibo.
Right.
It's been unbelievable.
Everywhere right now.
And we have a very special guest with us as well.
Did she not kill it early in the performance?
She was amazing. She was
Beautiful.
Absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Minzy.
Oh, thank you.
Miss, I actually wanted to ask you, is there a reason why you started to get more involved in the climate control?
I can tell in Korean.
Yes.
우리가 지구를 사랑하고 또 환경을 사랑하는 게 여러분들에게 얼마나 소중한 일이고 또 행복한 일인지 같이 느끼게 하고 싶었어요. 그래서 여러분들도 꼭 참여하셨으면 좋겠습니다.
예. 고맙습니다.
네.
알았어요? Yes.
Yes.
We have a lot of amazing tweets that we've been tracking.
We do.
Yeah.
So with the hashtag 24 Hours of Reality, we are grabbing all of your posts online and popping them up on here for the whole world to see. And we want to highlight some of our favorite ones.
Let's do it.
This one is from Anna. Now, if you see, there's actually a giraffe here watching the show at the watch party. Are there a lot of giraffes at this watch party? Like, is this a watch party full of giraffes?
I think
are
it's
you a
watch
giraffe?
Party for giraffe only.
I just hope it was a giraffe that actually tweeted this out. That would be very impressive.
Yes, definitely.
Now, we also have someone who just got back from one of her exams, and she is going to try and stay up for the entire broadcast, the entire 24-hour broadcast.
Wow.
So please do
Lots
it with
of
us.
coffee,
It'd be
yes.
so fun, and keep us informed and up to date on what you're up to as you watch it.
This one's pretty cool.
You have a lot of fans.
Yeah, this one's actually from Minzy right now. She's watching from Canada.
Whoa, Canada.
Almost 2 a.m., but I had to
Amazing.
see you perform, all of you say.
Wow, that's amazing.
We have some more people who are very concerned about the air that they breathe, and they care about the climate crisis because they are worried about their health, which is what this whole broadcast is all about. So if you guys want to join the conversation and get your post up on here for the whole world to see, for millions of people to see, use the hashtag
24 hours of reality.
on Instagram, Twitter,
Weibo,
Facebook. That's pretty much
yeah.
got it.
Pretty much covered it all. I think so.
I cannot
I
wait to
think
see you
so.
guys online, and we'll be right back here at the Social Media Corner in a little bit. See you soon.
During this broadcast, we'll be looking at several broad areas where the climate crisis and our dependency on fossil fuels are creating dire health consequences, including extreme weather, pollution, infectious disease, and food and water insecurity. Each of these are interconnected and have rippling effects beyond their initial health impact, such as mental health conditions from prolonged stress and PTSD, and climate conditions sparking conflict and violence, as well as displacement. Right now, we'll focus on the impact of extreme weather with a short video hosted by Brian Cranston. Take a look.
Our climate is in crisis. Our health is at stake. And it's not just you. The weather is getting warmer. Storms are getting stronger. Droughts are lasting longer. And it's all connected. The bottom line, our climate is changing. And as weather gets more extreme, it puts all of us in danger that is increasing by the day. Fossil fuel pollution has driven the change in our climate by trapping more of the sun's heat. Today, warming temperatures are creating more severe hurricanes, droughts, fires, and floods, all putting our health at risk. The heat is dangerous all by itself. Heat waves are getting hotter and lasting longer, breaking one record after another. When temperatures get this high, the weather can turn deadly, with outdoor workers, children, and the elderly at much higher risk of everything from heat stroke to heart attacks to death. More heat also means water evaporates faster from rivers, lakes, and oceans. When fields dry up and drought stretches on, farmers struggle to keep their crops alive and feed us all. Families, even entire communities, are forced to leave their homes, the ones that they've had for generations, sometimes with deadly consequences. It goes on. Parched conditions also mean more frequent and ferocious wildfires, devouring homes and choking the air with smoke and toxic fumes that can spread for thousands of miles. All this heat starts a dangerous cycle. That's because warmer air holds more water vapor. So when the rain finally comes, it can strike with torrential force, unleashing lethal floods and landslides. Over the ocean, this extra energy and water vapor becomes fuel for hurricanes, turning everyday storms into powerful forces of destruction. Wind gets more ferocious. Rains get heavier and hit harder. The headlines show the results: widespread injuries, trauma, and even deaths. But what they don't show is the aftermath, how weeks and months without power can cripple communities and cost many, many more lives. Bottom line, it's a direct connection from burning fossil fuels to more fires, severe storms, and heat, making our world more dangerous every day. But today we can skip the dirty stuff and protect our health and power our lives with clean and affordable renewable energy. In a world where our health is in the balance, the choice is clear. Protect our planet. Protect ourselves. Find out more at realityproject.org.
Dr. Satrio Sumantri Brojonegoro is the president of the Indonesian Academy of Sciences, and he is joining us here now in Los Angeles to talk about the impact of the climate crisis on Indonesia. Welcome, Dr. Satrio. Thank you so much for traveling all the way from Jakarta to be with us here today.
With pleasure. Thank you.
So, Dr. Satrio, Indonesia is known for its beautiful beaches, but with that expansive coastline, it is also considered one of the most at-risk countries when it comes to the climate crisis. Can you tell us a bit about what you're experiencing in terms of impacts and how those impacts are affecting the health of your citizens?
Yeah, as Indonesia has more than 17,000 islands, therefore 60% of the population live in the coastal areas. So any change or any influence to the coastal area, for example, climate change, it will create some coastal ecosystem degradation, including water availability also decrease and changes in the crop production, as well as the loss of biodiversity. Climate change has also an impact on health, mortality, food security, migration pattern, natural ecosystem, and economic prosperity, both at local and national level. Climate change also will impact Indonesian condition. For example, the average temperature now in Indonesia, temperature rise, is between 0.5 to 3.92 centigrade in 2100, using the data we obtained from 1981 to 2010. As for rainfall, for example, we have a dry season and rainy season. Now it's shift. We can no longer predict when we'll have rain and when we have a dry season. So the farmer will be very severely influenced for that. In 2050, the sea level rise due to global warming is projected to be 35 to 40 centimeters relative to the year 2000. But that is the prediction without dynamic ice melting. If we include that, it can be much higher than that. Perhaps it can reach to 175 centimeters in 2100. In Indonesia also, cases of malaria, dengue, diarrhea, cholera are predicted to increase with temperature rise. As you know, when temperature rise, the bacteria will develop even faster. And also because our water become contaminated, affecting the poor people who live in the coastal area, and there are nothing they can do for coping the condition. Water scarcity is an additional issue as a result of climate change. Illness stemming from vehicular emissions and air pollution include acute respiratory infection, bronchial asthma, bronchitis, and eye and skin irritation. Among other impacts of climate change, the impact of human health has unique pathways transmission and is specific for every single disease. Once unique pathway transmission occurs, the spreading of disease will continue from one infected people to other, and from the new infected people to broader population due to the snowballing effect.
Well, we've been talking about how this climate crisis is becoming a health crisis. Yeah. And it's true that Indonesia is really at the front lines of all of this. And this is why you are a strong advocate of blue carbon policies to be implemented in your country. First of all, can you begin by telling us what blue carbon is, and how will these policies and initiatives help create a positive impact on the climate crisis?
Yeah, blue carbon concept is a concept that carbon is captured by the world oceans and coastal ecosystem via photosynthesis and then store in the form of biomass and sediment in mangroves, seagrass, and phytoplankton. Principally, ecosystem sequester and store significant amount of coastal blue carbon from the atmosphere and ocean, and hence are now recognized as their role in mitigating climate change. So when we can capture the carbon, then we can control the climate change. That's the idea. Since 1990s, Indonesian government has grown more aware of conserving and developing the blue carbon ecosystem. In fact, in 1999, the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries was established with the aim to improve coastal community welfare and maintain the environmental condition of all marine areas and resources. The coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs was later on established to coordinate and ensure the implementation of maritime policies and regulation. The formation of both ministries is crucial to Indonesia conservation effort for its blue carbon, as both agencies release a number of critical regulation and policies. Although we have initiated and participated in many international conservation events and conduct scientific research through international collaboration, including producing the National Science Plan on blue carbon for 2015-2020. But still, we have some challenges to overcome.
So these coastal ecosystems, they are absolutely pivotal and critical when it comes to carbon sequestration, as well as biodiversity and blue carbon. You talked about how the government is moving towards conservation of coastal ecosystems, but what is the level of public awareness when it comes to conserving these coastal ecosystems?
With Indonesia's strategic maritime position and its rich resources, conservation work is now more important than ever. Conservation here does not mean simply only to preserve and protect the existing ecosystem, but it also means developing set area to improve and surrounding community in socio-economic situation, because we don't want people to just having the conservation without additional value for the economic growth. Otherwise, people will complain. They say, oh, better we just scrap the mangrove and build the infrastructure or fish pond or something. So conservation effort must be in line with the growth of employment opportunity in this location. The awareness level varies. Some area, they are aware that it's important to preserve the ecosystem, while in other area, they feel they have better opportunity if they convert into fish pond, infrastructure, and perhaps port or housing. One of the biggest challenges in implementing conservation effort is in changing people's behavior or mindset by educating and creating awareness of the importance of preserving the area ecosystem from both an economic and environmental standpoint. Therefore, many destroy their surrounding natural environment for short-term goal, despite potentially losing the area resources in the long term.
Changing behavior is really a long-term process,
mindset change.
although it needs to be something that happens in the short term.
They have to.
So let's talk specifically about the mangroves, because I know it's you have a lot of mangroves in Indonesia. And how does the loss of the mangrove ecosystem affect the climate crisis?
Mangrove ecosystem seems to be small compared to the overall area of the coastal line. But it's the most productive system, ecosystem, even compared with other ocean ecosystem. Research show that beach vegetation could absorb much higher level of atmospheric carbon dioxide than land vegetation. So we focus on how to use this beach vegetation to absorb more carbon. Out of all various beach plants, the mangroves ecosystem has the capability to absorb the highest level of carbon dioxide in comparison to tropical rainforests, salt marsh, and seagrass meadows. Further than that, mangrove forests absorb CO2 and store it as organic carbon in biomass and sediments. Therefore, losing mangrove ecosystem contribute severely to the climate crisis. And maybe I should add now, what measures have been taken in Indonesia to restore its mangroves? Indonesia early conservation efforts include rehabilitating a beach area through a reclamation and rejuvenation of local mangrove forest by creating ecotourism. So we create an area, the mangrove forest, to become an ecotourism area. Unfortunately, many of these projects have faced technical and political hurdles. Hence, they have not produced the most optimal result yet. In fact, Indonesia has initiated the ecotourism since 2010. It's quite a significant move by itself. Furthermore, government regulation and participation towards conserving mangrove ecosystem have positively impacted the local communities' preservation effort too. For example, through effective public and private partnership, they have rehabilitated 2 to 4 million mangroves in North Java, West Sumatra, and South Sulawesi. This partnership have also attempted to introduce other benefit to creating sustainable mangrove ecosystem by developing the honeybee industry in mangrove forest, creating food products from mangroves and ecotourism.
So there's lots of opportunity to mitigate the climate crisis through the mangrove ecosystem and as well as blue carbon. Let's go back to blue carbon. Can you tell us how blue carbon initiatives should be factored in to the emission cuts when it comes to countries' and their promises for the Paris Agreement?
As mentioned earlier, the coastal ecosystem sequester and store significant amount of coastal blue carbon from the atmosphere and ocean, and hence become the main role in mitigating climate change. So when they absorb significant carbon, they will do the role on that. Indonesia commitment on the 2015 Paris Climate Change Agreements is outlined in nationally determined contribution that describe the country's transition to a low carbon and climate resilience future as follows. And blue carbon is an important part of that section. Unconditionally reduce emission to 26% below business as usual by 2020 and 29% by 2030. The conditional reduction, an additional 12%, is subject to provision in the global agreement, including through bilateral cooperation, covering technology development and transfer, capacity building, payment for performance mechanisms, technical cooperation, and access to financial resources. Sources of reduction include energy, industry, agriculture, land use change and forestry, and waste. Reduce risk in all development sectors by 2030 through local capacity strengthening, improved knowledge management, convergent policy on climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction, and application of adaptive technology.
Well, Dr. Satria, I would like to thank you very much for your leadership in this issue and also for traveling all the way from Jakarta to join us here on 24 Hours of Reality. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Each year, 24 Hours of Reality brings the world together for one full day to talk about the reality of the climate crisis and how we can solve it. Today, you can become a citizen producer of this live broadcast and have your name appear in the closing credits. Don't miss your chance to support this world-changing broadcast. Visit 24hoursofreality.org to learn how. Each year, the United Nations holds a conference on climate change to assess what progress has been made in fighting the climate crisis across the globe and to discuss what steps need to be taken to move forward and avert dire consequences. 3 years ago, this led to every nation on Earth accepting the historic Paris Agreement. So what does that mean for us right now as the world comes together in Poland for COP24? Take a look.
In 2015, the world came together in Paris and agreed to limit greenhouse gas emissions in the groundbreaking Paris Agreement. The goal? Make best efforts to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius, the level where extreme weather and other effects of the climate crisis would become dangerously destabilizing. This commitment was a big deal, but it was just the beginning. That's because the promises nations made were just a minimum effort. Alone, they're not enough to avoid the strongest effects of the climate crisis. So in Paris at COP21, countries agreed to review and ramp up their commitments every few years. That brings us to 2018 and to Poland, where world leaders will gather once more. And there's a lot at stake this time. The agenda includes discussions of more ambitious goals and how to meet them. But now scientists tell us we have to aim higher and move faster, making massive emission cuts by 2030 to limit warming to 1.5 degrees and avoid the worst. If it sounds like there's a lot on the line, there is. Yes, a few leaders won't accept reality, but most of the world is committed, and cities, states, provinces, businesses, and other groups everywhere are stepping up to fight the climate crisis. Together, we can solve this. Today, we have the tools to power the world with clean, renewable energy. But our leaders have to act. We know what we must do. Our health is in the balance. Tell your leaders, protect our planet, protect ourselves.
And now, joining us via satellite from COP24 in Katowice, Poland, Indonesia's Minister of Environment and Forestry, Minister Siti Nurbaya Bukhar. Thank you so much for joining us today, Minister Bukhar.
Thank you. Thank you.
Minister Bukhar.
Same to you too. Thank you.
Minister Bukhar, much of Indonesia's greenhouse gas emissions are due to land use, including deforestation. Can you discuss this and the challenges being faced? How are the various stakeholders, including non-state actors, coming together to stem further destruction of the Indonesian rainforest?
Yeah, thank you. Indeed, we have Indonesian land-based emission are used, were used together with energy sector. So in our NDC, as mentioned by my colleague before, that we have emissions from forest and land use, as well as from energy and transportation and waste and industry. So the biggest part of the emission is coming from the forest. Say for the 29% of emission reduction on the 2030, about 17% is coming from forestry and land use. So we are facing at the beginning, when the government administrative of President Joko Widodo to come into this government periods, we face problems on quite big problems on forestry sectors, like let's say weak of controls, less law enforcement, also tenurial conflicts and permits problem. So a big of woods exploitations and trees and things like that. So our president is shifting the paradigm from timber timber management to the forest landscape management. So with that paradigm, we develop corrective measures for this, and we have been undertaking the provision access for the forest to the smallholders. So when you ask about what are the roles of the multi-stakeholders, I am happy that Indonesia's multi-stakeholders involve very dynamics in this climate change agenda nationally. So let's say from the, of course, from the ministerial coordination, as well as from the legislative, and even from the Supreme Court, because you know, when we talk about the law enforcement, a lot of things dealing with the courts, etc., we finally get some support that they could understand that the importance of environment and reducing the emissions. From the community level, we have a very good support also from the grassroots, from the communities, as well as CSOs and academicians, and also from the private sectors. I think for the improvement of the permits, as well as the law enforcement, also the controls and those things, all of these multi-stakeholders, they are involving very good for our efforts.
Great. Well, wonderful to hear that all the stakeholders are coming together to fight this here in Indonesia. Well, Indonesia's forest moratorium policy has very large mitigation potential. So stopping the clearing and conversion of forests could avoid substantial amounts of carbon dioxide emissions by 2030. Can you discuss the details of this?
Yeah, actually we have a quite and mostly a very strong commitment on this moratorium on peatland. There are some activities and policies regarding this peatland management due to the big problem of forest fire in 2015. It has been every year during 17 to 18 years peat fire or forest fire quite big in Indonesia. So our President Jokowi, during the Paris Agreement in 2015 December, he promised that we will take, let's say, radical steps to improve these policies. So we put a strong policies on moratorium on peatland and on primary forest, and we put a great law enforcement, and we ask also concession corporates to do the improvement of their plan for 10 years and things like that. So during the forest fire by 2015, it has been burned areas of 2.6 million hectares, and part of this is about more than 800,000 is in the peatland area. So with that, we put a very strong corrective measure for this. So let's say this is important. This peatland is the most important part for the emissions contribution in the forestry sector. Let's say our ambition for this reducing emissions on the 2030 is about 2.8 gigaton of CO2, and by 2016 we projected about 1.7 gigaton, and we did actual counting the actual emission is about 1.45 gigaton. So that means we have a successful agenda with about 319 million tons of CO2. That means from 29% we succeed for, by 2016 about 10.8% of reduction of the emission. So this is all mostly coming from forest fire, because the biggest part is in 2015 is coming from the peatland. So this is more or less the situation. So we did a lot of activities on peatland. We control the permits. We suspend the permits who has been causing big troubles, and they didn't say, the corporate didn't like to do the recovery and those things. So a lot of things. Also with the local people, with the smallholders, we ask them, we give an assistance to improve, and also for the land clearing process, etc., for the smallholders. So a lot of steps has been taken from by the Indonesian government to control the reduction emission from the peatland. That's more or less the steps.
It sounds like tremendous potential when it comes to the peatlands in mitigating climate change. Well, your colleague earlier, Dr. Satrio, talked about the mangrove forests. And Indonesia's mangrove forests are an important natural resource that support food security and provide buffers against storms. But unfortunately, a lot of the coastal communities have chopped down mangrove forests to clear the way for fish and shrimp farms, as you know. This also increases emissions, and that contributes to the climate crisis. So what are these climate-aware villages doing to restore the mangroves and stop their removal?
Yeah, actually we aware that the mangrove forest ecosystem is a vulnerable ecosystem. And as it is general in the world that many people is stay in and live in the low-lying areas of the coastal zones and mangrove ecosystem. So in the forestry sectors regarding the mangrove, we have been doing the in one map policy about the mapping that in Indonesia we have about 3.3 million hectares of mangroves, and in the forestry system we introduce and assist people and the communities to work under a social forestry program. My colleague has been saying about the ecotourism in the mangrove ecosystem. That's part of our social forestry program. That means the village concession forest for the production. So the ideas is that they still planting and putting some areas in the mangrove areas, 50%, and the rest is also can be used for the cultivation, either for shrimps or for fish or for whatever. So there are many types of the activities in the mangrove forest. Areas can be good for the livelihood. They can be for ecotourism as well as for production. I think if somebody can come, and many of the, let's say I invite already minister from Congo to see the peatland and the mangrove, as well as the Parliament of Norway also to come and see. So this is interesting that, let's say, within more than 70,000 hectares of the areas of ecosystem, villagers can be working, and they can also have a big gross margin. So we can work and control the mangrove, work together and get benefit of it. We can also get benefit from mangrove, like my colleague mentioned before. That is for the trigona honeybee. That's also for nipa syrup and nipa flower, pit coffee, and tamarind seeds, and a lot of things. So we can control the emission reduction while also developing the livelihoods. That is more or less what we are experiencing in many places in Indonesia, like in North Sumatra, in West Kalimantan, in East Kalimantan, and also in West Java. So we can make it together, the environment and in the economy.
So a lot of action being taken in Indonesia. I'd like to thank you, Minister Bakar, for joining us today on 24 Hours of Reality. And thank you for your leadership in making the changes in this area.
Thank you.
Are you inspired by what you learned today? Continue your learning and advocacy at the upcoming Climate Reality Leadership Corps training in Brisbane on June 5th to 7th, 2019. Join former Vice President Al Gore and a host of inspiring experts to gain a deeper understanding of the climate fight in the region and the tools, know-how, and networks to make a difference. For more information and to apply, please visit climaterealityproject.org/training.